4 years old, I was starting fires, grass, dry weeds, leaves. Lit my first cigarette, four and a half, a Winston butt from the ashtray of my father's 54 Ford, waiting for him as he walked to the head of the field to change the water to the next 50 rows of sugar beets. The butt was a little short, and I singed the front of my butch cut when I lit it. My mother noticed at dinner. "Oh my God, you've been lighting matches again?" She pulled me up out of the chair. "Al, you didn't notice? Where the hell was he?" He was in the car, mumble, mumble. "Okay, then," she says, "we warned you." Wait, what? "Hold him, Al, hold his fingers." She got out her matches, struck one, and burnt me. I probably cried, but I don't remember. She put my hand in a pot of ice water. The sting went away eventually. Then they sent me to bed. I didn't stop. Summers, migrant workers came through to work the fields, Mexican nationals, whole families. That year, one of the kids had a Zippo. It was beautiful. He let me use it. I started some tumbleweeds on fire. That started some grass on fire. That lapped up against the side of the barn before Uncle Tom saw and came running with his shovel, cursing me a blue streak as he beat out the flames. Finally, my parents realized I'd never stop, so they gave me the job of burning the garbage in the pit out back of the house. Paper, plastic, rubber, cardboard, cereal boxes, all of it burning differently, some fast, some slow, some with toxic colors, and some just pure orange flame. It was a sound and a smell, flushed cheeks and smoke, the orchard beyond wavering through the heated air. I could spend an hour there experimenting, lighting this with that. The matches were magic in my hands. Years later, I researched serial killers for a job. Almost to a man, and they were all men, at least at that time. They had been fire starters when they were kids. Not arsonists. It wasn't that they wanted to burn things down, but rather that they just wanted to burn something, anything. Rage. Rage inside. Put it outside. Inside it burns and burns. Outside I can see it. I can control it sometimes. I can show it what to burn. Where does that much rage come from? I don't know. I seem to have it from the gate. Was it from my father? World War II, my father was a rifleman who fought in Okinawa. The battle for Okinawa is part of the forgotten history of the war, the last occupied island standing between the Allies and Japan. But in the 82 days the battle lasted, about 3,000 people each day were killed. Americans, civilians, and Japanese soldiers, over 240,000 lives in just over 11 weeks. Over 240,000 lives in just over 11 weeks. My father's unit was hit with mortar fire. Only him and one other soldier survived. He spent 6 months in an army hospital with his rebuilt jaw wired shut. All that death, all that trauma, all the killing and the being killed. How many times did he talk about it to his family? Not once. It was just pushed down and pushed away until out of nowhere, sitting at the kitchen table, he would start to cough. Cough as if his lungs were coming up until finally, shaky and red-faced and surprised, he'd stop and open his fist to reveal a piece of shrapnel, jagged, black, and ugly lead that had worked its way into his lungs and out of his body, as if he had coughed up a piece of the darkness that had been festering inside since the war. It wasn't until college I began to understand that darkness inside, my father's and my own. First, Friedrich Nietzsche, philosopher of Lutheran despair, my brother. My copy of his writings is tattered and dog-eared, worn out from his helping to save my life. One bright light I could use to guide me. Then Carl Jung, and looking into my dreams and into the shadows and traumas of a life. And then Colin Wilson, one of the angry young men of 1950s England. Wilson's book, The Outsider, published shortly after Fahrenheit 451, spoke what it felt like to be me, the angst of not belonging, being out of balance within and without, and how better men than we had dealt with it or failed to deal with it through the decades. He wrote about these brilliant souls, Camus, Sartre, Van Gogh, T.E. Lawrence, Hemingway, Hermann Hesse, and more, trying with every ounce of themselves to find their way through the darkness, writing, painting, thinking, fighting, to find some sense of light within. Their trying led to some of the greatest art ever, but often it wasn't enough to keep them from falling into their own tragic ends. For me, all that time later, reading about them allowed me to take a full breath, find ways of going deeper, live another day. The story that tugged at my own soul and has stayed there was Nijinsky, physical, intuitive, emotionally childlike, too sensitive for this world. It is as if I see too deep and too much, he wrote. And again in his diary, he writes, I do not want the death of the senses. I want people to understand. I cannot cry and shed tears over what I write, but I cry within me. I feel the ache of it and the truth of it. I feel my heart break for him. He ends up without a place to dance. He falls further and further away from the world, from his ability to be in the world, and he is left alone with himself, trying to make sense of it all until, shortly before he is institutionalized, he writes, I am God in a body. Everyone has this feeling, but no one uses it. The dancing of him knows God, but the being of him in the world cannot hold it. And when he tries, it drives him to madness. It's too much, until finally he writes, God is fire in the brain. God is fire in the brain. God is fire in the brain. Oh, these books, these words, these flames, these heroes, these signposts out of the wilderness. God is fire in the brain. This is what Bradbury says. If you're paying attention, if you're trying to make it all fit, your brain will be on fire. Your brain should be on fire. And if it's not, then it's as good as burning all these books, these companions that are here to guide us to our own truth, show us the tools to find our own truth, teach someone to fish, feed them for a lifetime. At the end of Fahrenheit 451, our hero Montag has joined the network of walking books. Rebels in the countryside, bums on the outside, libraries on the inside. For years, this is what I've been myself. My wife calls me an autodidact. I think it's because she doesn't want me to feel bad for not graduating college. But a bum with books works too. Books got me through jail, living in a car, working in a carnival, through decades of being lost in my own personal hell. They have offered me hope and companionship, the chance to be close to those far more brilliant than I can ever hope to be, yet even so, they still speak to me. They let me get close enough to understand something. Their words are written in fire on the inside of me, and I wear them. I wear the knowledge inside out. I have never burned a book. It would be like taking a life. But books have burned away what doesn't belong in me, what isn't the truth of me, consumed the rage, shame, guilt, despair, my own, what I have carried for my father. They have taken me to India again and again, taught me to think, feel, and live in different ways, new ways, ever-changing ways. Books have ignited the fire of God in my brain, where it grows and expands, burning away everything that keeps me separate from life, everything that keeps me separate from love. Robert Johnson, Scott Peck, Sri Aurobindo, the I Ching and Raymond Chandler, Franklin Merrill Wolfe, Paul Williams, Carolyn Keene, W. Somerset Maugham, Graham Greene, James Joyce, Malcolm Lowry, Washington Irving, Hunter Thompson, Jim Harrison, Graham Joyce, Joseph Heller, Robert Stone, Edgar Allan Poe, Julia Cameron, Pete Dexter, Larry Brown, Ernest Holmes, Michael Hare, Tim O'Brien, Samuel Delaney, Kurt Vonnegut, Philip K. Dick, Robert Heinlein, Madeleine L'Engle, Richard Hugo, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, William Shakespeare, Eugene O'Neill, Richard Brautigan, Lucius Shepard, Arthur Conan Doyle, Roger Zelazny, Dalton Trumbo, Edgar Rice Burroughs, Ray Bradbury. Love is God is fire in the brain.
Wow.
Yeah. I will remember.
Wow.